Greetings, programs. This is Wretch, and welcome back to Shadowrun Hong Kong. We spoke to Gobbet and Isobel. Now let's have a chat with the gentleman. Let's talk to Racter first. Racter's shop is sweltering hot, even more so than it was the first time you stepped inside. The whir of actuators accompanies the fine motions of the manipulator arms that hang from the ceiling. They're turning an object over and over in their articulated hands, soldering wires and hammering rivets. Ah, my friend, welcome back. Racter touch-types a series of commands into the bracer, and the arms relax into an idle posture. He smiles at you, a cigarette dangling from his lip. There, that's better. Now, what can I do for you? Well, how are you getting along with the other members of the team, Racter? Perfectly well, thank you. They all seem competent enough, and there haven't been any major personality conflicts so far. He rubs his chin thoughtfully. So long as they continue performing to an acceptable standard, I can see no reason not to continue our arrangement. It's good to run with the team again. Sure, alright. What do you think of them personally? They're fine, I suppose. All fine. Gobbet is quite charming, Isobel keeps to herself, and Duncan is doing his best in a bad situation. Gaichu is quite intriguing. I'm very pleased that the team is willing to overlook his unfortunate condition. Many in the shadows wouldn't be. There's a momentary pause, and he shrugs. And that, I'm afraid, is all I have to say. Apologies if you were looking for more. You're still something of a mystery to the group, Racter. Mind if I ask you a few questions? No, I don't mind. Not at all. He takes a drag on his cigarette, then slowly releases the smoke. I can't promise that my answers will satisfy your curiosity, of course, but you may certainly ask. What was it like growing up in the Russian Republic? Tumultuous, as you might expect. You probably aren't old enough to remember the Euro Wars, but I am. I know bits and pieces of the history, but I didn't live through it. Well, the wars were formative experiences for Russians of my generation. Not dramatic per se, certainly not as they were for the Germans, Finns, and Poles, but important nonetheless. My country was the instigator in the first Euro War back in '30. I remember the rhetoric, the hardships of living under a wartime economy, the rampant xenophobia that took hold. I remember how we all cheered when our forces invaded Poland. 3 months. That was all that it took for our military to crush what meager resistance the Poles could bring to bear. It was quite the source of national pride at home. I remember our drive into Germany and the desperate bid to reclaim the eastern portion of that country for ourselves. Just think about the symbolic significance of such an act. An audacious move, to be sure, but Secretary Krapunin was determined to make history. So what happened? I don't want to judge him because that I don't know, his thoughts on it, but did the German military stop you? No, the Night Wraith incident did. Night Wraith? British-made fighter bombers with stealth capabilities. Very state-of-the-art. Very powerful. At least that's what they were reported to have been. Nobody has ever come forward to accept responsibility for the attack. Regardless of who was behind it, the result was the same. Wave upon wave of bombings that targeted our forces and the Germans alike, coupled with the assassinations of dozens of military leaders. A devastating synchronized operation expertly carried out over the course of a single night. At home, vital attacks shut down our power grids. Hundreds of thousands of Russian homes found themselves without heat or electricity in the dead of winter. Koshi scuttles forward, allowing the rigger to rest his hand on the sloping metal of its chassis. Racter stares at his own deformed reflection in the metal of the drone's body, a sad smile on his face. I remember huddling under a mountain of cheap blankets that my mother had piled up on my bed. They did little to protect me from the cold, but there was something that I could hang on to. Something tangible that I associated with warmth and comfort and home. There, as my body trembled and I watched my breath frost over, a horrible truth descended upon me. We had caused this. We were the villains of the First Euro War. For the first time, I came face to face with what Krapunin's folly had brought us, and there under that ridiculous heap of rags, I came to realize what would surely come to pass. The world thought us villains, and so they would treat us like villains. We would be pariahs on the international stage, crippled by retributive sanctions. We'd never live down the shame. He wipes his hands as if cleaning them. A wry smile spreads across his face. And then the AFA invaded Greece and Spain. sparking off Euro War II. We redeployed our troops to help repel them, and all was made right again. I have to imagine that you still had enemies in Poland and Germany, even after the start of the Second War. Oh, we were still regarded with suspicion, of course, but all of Europe might have fallen if it hadn't been for our help. In essence, we took back our reputation at gunpoint. Not an ideal solution, I admit, but it worked. Within the span of 4 months, we Russians had gone from nobodies to a terrible threat to unlikely saviors in the eyes of the Western world. Studying exactly how this happened has taught me a great deal about human psychology and social dynamics. Human psychology? You say that as if you weren't one. He laughs. Just the figure of speech, my friend. Nothing more. Now, shall we talk about something else? Surely there are more interesting and relevant things to discuss. He is really interesting. You mentioned that the Second Euro War was sparked off by the AFA. Who were they? He takes a drag on his cigarette. Ah, yes, I suppose that you wouldn't know. They were only active for the years surrounding the conflict, after all. The AFA was the Alliance for Allah, serving under Molad Saeed Jazir, a coalition of right-wing Middle Eastern governments that assembled under the failure, some say sabotage, of the United Islamic Conference. They took to a weakened Europe and saw an opportunity, one that my country was entirely responsible for creating. So they launched a surprise attack? Yes, but in hindsight, we should have foreseen it. Ultimately, the AFA did what any hawkish power would have done in their position. I cannot fault them for taking advantage of Europe's weakened state. Given their circumstances, they certainly would have been foolish not to. So what happened? How did the war end? The AFA folded in 1937, after Jazir's assassination. A lucky thing for us, too. The body count could have been a great deal higher. In the years that were active, the AFA gave us a hell of a fight. Did you immigrate directly from Russia to Hong Kong? No. Between my years in Nizhny Novgorod and my time here in Hoi, I spent a year in the free city of Berlin. Hey, maybe you ran into my Decker. That was where I first got my feet wet as a Shadowrunner, you see. I ran with a team of anarchists for a time and learned the ropes of the occupation under their tutelage. What can you tell me about that team of yours? He shrugs. A good group of people. Disorganized, to be sure, but capable. Sadly, we're no longer on the best of terms. What happened? An opportunity arose, and I seized it. In so doing, I left Berlin for Hong Kong, and I did so without much advance notice. My absence made life difficult for them, and they blamed me for their hardships. You're a grown man. If you wanted to leave, you're under no obligation to stay. Thank you for taking my side, but I can see their point as well. As I said, my departure caused some complications for them. That said, I haven't lost any sleep over it. I merely did what I had to do. He looks away, a wistful expression on his face. Koshi scrapes the ground with his forelegs, its sensors fixed firmly on you. Ultimately, I would say that my time in Berlin was quite educational, different from my earlier life in Russia, to be sure. As I said, the experience was invaluable. Ultimately, though, Hoi is probably better suited to my sensibilities. How so? Well, life in Hong Kong is more structured than it is in Berlin. Things make sense here in a way that the Flux state didn't. He taps a finger to his temple. I have an orderly mind. Everything in its place, neatly labeled and filed away. This approach is what allows me to make sense of the world. To say that the people I knew in Berlin thought differently would be an understatement. So why did you move from Russia to Berlin? He holds his tongue for a moment, considering. When we first met, I told you that I parted ways with Grishin Avrekor under unfortunate circumstances, yes? You mentioned it. These same circumstances led me to Berlin. I was wronged. I could not find recourse in Russia. He sighs. I suppose that there's no sense in being vague. I'll tell you the story if you want to hear it. Oh, please, lay it on me. You may remember the first self-repair system I mentioned the first time we met, the module that will allow Koshi, or any sufficiently equipped drone, to repair itself. I told you that my research had been lost. That was not strictly true. It was stolen by a pair of colleagues who I had long considered friends. They were researchers for my old lab. They turned against me, stole our work. In truth, my work, and defected. Oh, they betrayed you, huh? Yes. Driven by desperation, no doubt, and ambition. They'd always been fixated on getting out of Russia. Grishin Aviacorp was a nationalized corporation, and they wouldn't never get rich as cogs in a government-controlled machine. In our project, they saw their key to breaking away and earning their fortunes, never mind the fact that I was opposed to the idea. And so they took what was mine, and left me with nothing. Did you have any leads as to where they might have gone? Racter does not seem like the forgiving sort once he is wronged. Yes, the two had long spoken about moving to Berlin. Such was true of a great many academics in Russia. My homeland is a bureaucratic dictatorship, you see. There's little personal freedom, and there are many rules to be followed. As you might imagine, the stable anarchy of the flux state can be an alluring concept to those who live under totalitarian rule. Berlin is much romanticized back home. So you assumed that your former colleagues had run to Berlin? It was the only thing I had to go on. At best I would find them, at worst it would be a good place to rebuild my life. And of course to establish the web of contacts that I needed to track my betrayers down. There's a squeal of tortured metal as Koshi drags its claws over the iron grating that covers the floor. Racter glances down at the drone and it goes calm. He takes a deep breath and continues. It took me over a year to locate my former friends. It was a long, painstaking search, but I was nothing if not determined. I finally found evidence that they had used my research as a bargaining chip to secure passage to Ares, and that they were here in Hong Kong. And so you came here, to Hoi. He is relentless. He nods. I picked up and left the next day. My old team was upset, to be sure. Lucky Strike in particular howled for my blood, but I know where my priorities lie. Hey, I remember Lucky Strike from Dragonfall. And so, here I am, and here they are, and soon I'll be ready to act. He is, oh man, if he ticked off Lucky Strike, he already earns points in my book. I must really thank you for inviting me into the team. Your abilities will be invaluable when the time finally comes to make my move. Assuming, of course, that you'll be willing to help. Well, something tells me that you weren't surprised when I invited you onto the team. You were waiting for this, weren't you? I thought that it might go over better if you believed it'd be your idea. And it would seem that I was right. I am on the team, after all. Yes, you are. And you're right. I, for one, would be happy to help you. When you're ready, just say the word. I really like Racter. He's probably my favorite character out of the 4 so far. And thank you, my friend. But this is a discussion for another day. You aren't ready to hit an Ares facility yet, and there's more intelligence to gather before we make our move anyway. When the time comes, I'll let you know. What can you tell me about the colleagues who stole your work? Today they call themselves Taylor and Hardenham. He speaks through clenched teeth. Koshi drags a claw across the ground and you can hear the squeal of metal on metal. Those aren't their real names, obviously. They shed their former identities when they left their old lives behind. What were they called when you worked with them back at Grishin Aviacorp? It doesn't matter. Those men are as dead to me as they are to the world. My old colleagues no longer exist. Taylor and Hardingham are all that remain. They are targets now. Nothing more. He idly brushes Koshi's armored chassis with the fingertips of his right hand. Oh, how wonderful it will be to find them. What a reunion we will have. This stolen research means more to you than money, doesn't it? He nods his head. Yes, much more. It was my life's work, and it was important. Reducing it to a bargaining chip was a deadly insult, both to me and to all those who would benefit from my work. Let's see. I don't think I've seen you get this intense about anything. I don't want to, how important can it be? That's the worst thing you can say. That is insulting. The corner of his mouth tilts upward. I suppose that's probably true. This is a matter that's near to my heart. Indeed, it ties into the guiding philosophy of my life. Tell me, are you familiar with the concept of transhumanism? The transformation of humanity as a species by technological means. Actually, yeah, sure. If I'm not mistaken, we're already living in a transhumanist present. Yes, that's right. Transhumanism is no longer a philosophy. It is a fact. Look around you. Cybernetics are an important aspect of everyday life. Further, I would argue that the synthesis of man and machine is the crowning achievement of meta-humanity as a people. Cyber technology is an impressive technological feat, but our crowning achievement? Nah. That would come from a physical adept. He raises an eyebrow. And what would you suggest will be more important, more impactful to our species than the science of cyber technology? Let's see. I would say the monk would go with philosophy. Our understanding of the universe is more important than our ability to interface with machines. He shrugs. Apples and oranges, my friend. Apples and oranges. The sciences of cyber technology, biotechnology, and genomics are fundamentally altered the trajectory of meta-humanity as a species. Though the elective modification and improvement of our own physiology, we can tailor ourselves for niches that were previously inhospitable to metahuman life. By exerting our will over the composition of our own bodies, we have conquered the mindless trial and error of biological evolution. For the first time in history, there is a god, and he is us. How very Russian. Okay, got it. We're living in a transhuman world. So where were you going with this? In such a future, the capacity for unlimited self-repair would be indistinguishable from immortality. You can see, then, why the theft of my research came as such a blow. My former colleagues hadn't just stolen from me. They'd taken my contribution to the future of our species and reduced it to a bargaining chip. Yeah, I'd get it. I'd be upset too, to be honest. Yeah, I was more than upset, my friend. I was livid. I still am. But all will be made right in the fullness of time. I am nothing if not the patient man. I can wait. He rises and brushes himself off. And with that, I'm afraid that I'm going to have to bid you good night. I've taken enough of a break for one evening. There's still work to be done, and it'd be lax of me to put aside any longer. Thanks, Racter. It was interesting. He nods at you. Good night. So chances are good we're not going to be able to talk to him, so let's meet the new kid on the block. The storage room that functioned as Gaichu's cabin is a cramped, overheated mess. Piles of old ship parts and share space with tarnished cookware, flats of instant noodles, a collection of cast-off clothes, and reams of diagnostic manuals for obsolete computer hardware. To top it all off, there's barely any light whatsoever. All of the bulbs in this room are missing. Gaichu is busily moving boxes around, apparently in an effort to carve out some personal space amid the junk that he shares his cabin with. As you enter, he cocks his head and turns around. He's probably wanting to get it all feng shui. Welcome to my sanctuary, Sean. I apologize for the lack of light, but as I did not need it, Gobbet took the bulbs for use elsewhere. Gaichu puts down the box that he's in the process of moving and politely bows his head to you. How can I be of assistance? Just wanted to see how you were settling in. Gaichu rolls his shoulders in a diffident shrug. I live. I am among those who can make use of my services and who are not attempting to claim the bounty on my head. Is that not enough for now? I do need to talk about your condition, boss, about being a ghoul. Gaichu inclines his head. As you wish. You are my benefactor, and as such I yield to you. Ask then. I will do my best to answer. I thought ghouls were all animalistic predators. Most are. In the vast majority of cases, the infected become the crazed predators everyone sees on the nightly Trid news. Gaichu bares his jagged teeth, running his tongue across the tips of them as he tilts his head back. I bear the physical signs, but not the mental ones. A few escape that fate. There are others, though. In Africa, there is a nation of ghouls. It is called Asamando. The intelligent ghouls of Asamando care for the ones whose higher faculties have not been ravaged by the disease. Still, it is not a safe place to visit. So what makes you different? I am willful. Those with a strong sense of self, a chip on their shoulder, if you will, are always those that survive the infection with their minds intact. I suppose I am selfish enough to have retained a passable semblance of my former humanity. Well, aside from being blind, how has it affected you? Aside from my heightened sense of smell and hearing, I am stronger, tougher, and more resilient than any mundane human. I can achieve feats of physicality that are normally restricted to adepts and those with extensive enhancements. Gaichu lifts one hand, fingers crooked to show off his elongated nails. Claws, really. These, as well, as sharp as any small knife. I prefer my sword, but in a grapple they come in extremely handy. He draws one nail over the surface of his shoulder plates. A hairline spiral of armor peels off in the nail's wake. Holy crap. Do you still need to sleep? Can you turn into mist or anything? He's not a vampire. Gaichu chuckles, his laughter rasping out over his lips. Unfortunately, I do. I am not an undead creature of legend. If I manage to unlock the secret of rest without sleep, I'll be certain to inform you. So how do I know that the team is safe from you? Because I give you my word that I will not harm you or anyone else on the team. Gaichu squares his shoulders, expression stony. I am a man with a disease, not a mindless beast. My word is my bond. I can accept that. Good. I would hate to think there is lingering distrust between us. It seems like your condition is stabilized. For now, it has. I will not suddenly become a ravenous beast lurking in the hold of your ship. At least, no more so than I already am. Gaichu bares his teeth in a wry grin, dipping his head a little. Why did you pick the name Gaichu anyway? It was given to me. This is what the Japanese call ghouls, for the most part. I am vermin, a thing shunned by polite society, to be hunted and slain for a bounty. My old life is gone. It seemed as apt a name for the streets as any other that I could choose. I like that attitude. It turns the tables of power. Gaichu dips his head in agreement. One does not defeat the enemy solely by strength of arms. One must turn one's own weaknesses into strengths. It is an old and valuable lesson, too often forgotten. Your armor is heavier than what most Shadowrunners wear, and more distinctive too. Gaichu nods, growling his assent. That is correct. It is the armor worn by the elite soldiers of the Renraku corporate military, the Red Samurai. What are the Red Samurai? The Renraku Military Special Operations Division, the most elite that the corporation has to offer, on par with Ares Firewatch or Tyr Dagiri's Ghost. Red Samurai are world-class soldiers, assigned to only the most difficult and important missions. That armor's a rare thing for a Shadowrunner to have. That is true. It is considerably less rare for a Red Samurai to have a suit of it, however, even if he goes rogue. You were a Red Samurai? See, I'm glad I didn't mention that. Did you steal the armor? Because I really don't want to insult this guy. He has a sharp sword. Indeed. For the entirety of my adult life, I was a member of the Renraku military, specifically the Red Samurai. That changed relatively recently. I feel the reasons are abundantly clear. Hence, I still possess my armor, my sword, my training. They have served me well in both my previous life and in this one. Did you grow up in a corporation? Yes, in Kihashin, the Kyoto-Osaka Kobe sprawl. It is less populated than Neo-Tokyo, but not by much. I grew up in East Kobe, where my father was posted in a Renraku complex. Gaichu roots around in the nearby box, running his fingertips over several chips before deciding on one. He slots it into his PDA, and a Trid photo flickers to life in the space between you. A young man, obviously Gaichu, leans against a railing which overlooks a sprawling harbor complex of skyscrapers and cranes. His school uniform is ripped, and the beginnings of a black eye are forming. Abrasions cover his knuckles, and blood dots his pants. Despite this, he's grinning like he's just won the lottery, vibrant and fierce. It's not what I expected to see. What picture is it? Obviously, I'm not able to see the image. Oh, that's right. You're standing by a railing overlooking a city. Ah, that must be on Mount Maya. If I remember right, I gave better than I got in that fight. 3 against 1, but they were out of shape and cocky. I used to cause a lot of trouble when I was in school. My father was constantly raging that I had no sense of responsibility and that I needed to take life more seriously. A crackle erupts from Gaichu, sudden mirth spreading across his face. The final straw was when he bailed me out of jail. Yeah, I've been in jail, actually. That would have tried Raymond's patience, too. That is the curse of fathers everywhere, to have their children give them ulcers. Especially true for high-strung, authoritarian ones like Yasujiro. My friends and I stole a delivery van. It had a shipment of SimSense decks. Brand new, very expensive. We were going to fence them and use the money to take a trip to Okinawa. Gaichu pauses, cocking his head. Are you familiar with what it's like to grow up in a corporate family? Not a clue. You have to understand, children are trained to hate rival corporations. We do not regard theft of goods as illegal. We were simply doing our part to ensure Renraku's supremacy. This kind of behavior is ignored and even tactically encouraged by company media. Unfortunately, we were caught by security and not Renraku. What did your father do next? Gaichu clicks his tongue a few times. He seems reluctant to continue. That is a story for another time, unfortunately. I still have a lot of arranging to do, and I doubt anyone else will be willing to be alone with me in a darkened room. Come back later, and we will discuss it further. Okay. If that's what you want, at least he's not denying that he's never going to say it. We can discuss it a little bit later. Gaichu bows politely. It is. And thank you again for your hospitality. Ooh. Box of mementos. Gaichu's box of personal effects is overflowing with a collection of souvenirs, mementos, and knickknacks. There's no rhyme or reason to the collection of items. They appear to have been thrown in haphazardly. Laying atop... Wait a second, we've already looked at these, aren't we? Gaichu cocks his head, sniffing the air in your direction. Ah, I see you have found my box of personal effects. Please, feel free to examine whatever you like within it. Just take care to put them back when you are done. I do not own much, but the things I keep are very precious to me. They are all there remains of my former life. I guess we could actually ask him some questions about this. Let's examine the wooden mask. The wooden mask, okay. Viewed from above. The expression of the mask, while kindly, is ambiguous and uncanny. Viewed from above, the expression is one of calm contentment. Shifting the mask to view it at an upward angle causes the expression to seem melancholy, almost pained. That's cool. I've heard about masks that can change the expression depending on how you look. What's this wooden mask, Gaichu? It is a mask from the historical no play Ikuta Asumori. The place is that of a young samurai, Taya no Atsumori. Gaichu faces your direction, gesturing toward the mask. I had a collection of a dozen or so no masks when I was younger. That is the last remaining one, and my personal favorite. What's the difference between a normal play and no? No actors wear those masks to cover their faces. The angle they hold themselves at changes the expression of the mask, so the acting is highly rigid and controlled. The entire performance is highly ritualized. There is no measure of improvisation allowed, only refinement of the prescribed form. Gaichu folds his arms over his chest, dipping his chin in thought. The words are sung, like in a Western opera, and accompanied by a set of musicians known as a hayashi. The hayashi keeps time with several drums, a flute, and a chorus. A chorus in the Greek theatrical sense, I mean. Unfortunately, no is an unpopular art in modern times. I expect this is because of all the plays that are conducted in classical Japanese, which is not comprehensible to the general public. I have heard that the creators of No, a father and son in the 14th century, took inspiration from magical rituals at Shinto shrines. It is said that by placing masks upon their face, the actors become possessed by the spirit of the character they play. There are worse fates, I think, than to embody the spirit of a tragic warrior like Atsumori. What's the play about? A young man travels with the priest who raised him to Ikuta Shrine to commune with the spirit of his father, Taira no Atsumori. The young man's father died at the Battle of Ichu no Tani when the son was only a baby, and he wishes to know who his father was. The pair stay the night in a small hut. In the night, the hermit in the hut explains that he is the ghost of Atsumori. Atsumori has been granted a brief reprieve from his time in the afterlife to meet his son. During the night, they speak of the battle in which Atsumori was killed, the history of the Taira family, and their philosophy. Atsumori fades into darkness as he finishes the tale of the Taira's downfall, just as the family itself faded into obscurity. So think we, yet oh that we might change this fragile dream of joy into the lasting love of waking life, says Atsumori before fading. It is a tale of sorrow, love, and the burden of war upon the dead and living alike. The price one pays for war is not always in one's own blood alone, but in the shattering of one's own family. Why is it your favorite? Gaichu smiles, expression distant. A measure of civic pride, I suppose. And I like the story. Taira no Atsumori died in the Battle of Ichi no Tani, just outside Kobe. The play takes place primarily at Akuta Shrine, which is located in downtown Kobe. In old cities in Japan, especially in Keihanshin, I have always felt there is a sense of history whenever one looks. The skyline may have skyscrapers and delivery drones, but the foundations are laid on the bones of the dead. Gaichu shrugs, folding his arms across his chest. I think it is important to remember their sacrifices and joys, sorrows and glories. Gaichu laughs suddenly, shaking his head. That is why sometimes I worry I am a sentimentalist at heart. Now let's look at the lacquered box. The box is a deep, glossy black cube. The edges and corners are rounded rather than sharp, and the gold flake inlay across the surface glitters even in the dim lighting of the room. Sliding the top off, the interior contents are revealed. A calligraphy set, complete with inkstone and block, brushes, and paper. Gaichu wrinkles his nose, his expression one of distaste. Ugh, that thing. It's a beautiful set, but it's a shame that I'm unable to make use of it. Oh, that sucks. Surely you used to be able to. Gaichu snorts derisively, stifling laughter. No, my handwriting has always been absolutely terrible. Whatever fanciful stories you may have heard of being able to tell a swordsman's ability by his handwriting, I assure you that they are wrong. The set was a gift from a professor of Japanese literature. He appreciated my interest in the classics, the tale of the Heike, the tale of Genji, the collection of 10,000 Leaves, etc. I think he wished to encourage me to cultivate non-martial interests. Gaichu smiles crookedly and shrugs. I appreciated the gesture, but my attempts at fine calligraphy mostly resembled excited chickens prancing over paper, their feet soaked in ink. That's cool. Alright guys, well we got some interesting story from both gentlemen. We know a little bit about Gaichu's background and at least how he grew up with his father. And we know that Racter is a man on a mission for revenge. So, interesting stuff. We're going to look over our missions in the next episode and decide what we're going to do, and we are going to get into some action. So I hope you guys have enjoyed the episode. If you liked it, go ahead and click like down below, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, that'd be a big help, and we'll see you next time. Later days, everyone.